Hello, dear friends, and welcome to our podcast dedicated to sight reading through the lens of the historically informed performance practice. This episode is being recorded in Norway, where I'm taking part in an opera project at the Early Music Festival in Trondheim, Baroque Fest. I'll put a link that our listeners can check out the festival. It's a really cool place to be, and yeah, there are lots of nice people and lots of fun. And I'm interviewing today two very interesting people. Could you guys introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is ERIK SKANKE HØSØIEN. I'm a lute player based in Trondheim, Norway. And I also happen to be a part of the festival.
You are an artistic director of the festival, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And I'm Benoit Laurent. I play historical oboes in various ensembles, and I teach Baroque oboe and early music theory in Brussels at the Conservatory.
It's very nice. Thank you very much for joining me for this episode, because today I'm alone without my co-host Sebastien, that is usually taking part. Let's talk about the festival and actually what we are doing here. Could you please tell us more about the opera production that we are involved into?
We are producing an opera production here of two small operas, actually. Opera comique by the composer Duny, Egidio Duny. And the operas, they are named The Two Hunters and The Milk Maiden. I mean, if you want, you can say the French title. I won't dare.
I don't speak French.
Les deux chasseurs et la fermière. Et la laitière.
Thank you.
Exactly. And the other one is the painter who fell in love with the model. I have never heard these operas before. And I think that the exciting thing is that most people haven't heard it before, because it's very rarely performed.
I haven't even heard about this composer before being involved into this production.
Yeah.
How did you find it?
Well, my colleague in the festival, Martin Wahlberg, he's let's say an expert on this field. And I think this composer was actually the beginning of this type of opera, the opera comique. So it's actually two really important pieces of work.
I think, I did a similar episode about comic operas with the artistic director of the Early Music Festival in Utrecht, and we were talking about Pergolesi's comic opera, and also there was a lot of humor in the text and a lot of jokes. And do you think we were talking about the relevancy of the jokes, that for instance, the language of the time and the jokes of the time, like for nowadays, they can sound a bit inappropriate. They could be sounding a bit harsh for the contemporary environment and everything. What would you say about the text in those operas that we are performing today?
I think you are right that you could interpret many of these kind of jokes in a really kind of bad way. And I think that's what makes it, for me, interesting, because, listeners today, we are used to everything, you know, and especially when people go to early music concerts, they know what's coming. So I think maybe with this, they will still have this element of surprise, you know, because I think most of the people in the audience tonight will not know this piece, and maybe they are a bit shocked, you know, to see all these kind of undertones, can you say that, in the text? Yeah. So I think it's an interesting question, actually.
Today we are reading a sonata by Telemann, a sonata in D major, and that's from the collection corellisantes Sonaten. So that's the sonatas written in the style of Corelli, so a bit Italian vibes for today. And Benoit, could you tell us, how did you feel? What was your impression after the first sight reading when we just read it?
I'm always impressed by Telemann, by how clever he is, how funny he can be. It could sound like an exercise for a composer to try to compose in the way of Corelli, and Telemann is so good that the music is wonderful, and you see the Corelli influence, and you can see it's just got good music. It's not a homework from a composer. And yeah, of course, it's violin music, so on the oboe sometimes it's a bit awkward, but still it's funny. It's some melodic movement which I'm not used to, so it's interesting to do that.
Yes, right, because these sonatas were written for either two violins or two traversi and the basso continuo, and I think today we found this setting that was quite, I don't know, the village mood, let's say, wind instruments with the lute. But I actually really like the colors that we found together, because this setting, it's maybe quite unusual, especially for this sonatas. I actually haven't heard that somebody would play in such a setting with an oboe. And my other question is, what was your experience with playing the violin part? Because probably technically it was not the most comfortable way of writing.
Yeah, on the oboe, when we get a very nice singing melody, like actually in Italian music sometimes you have those wonderful melodies, and this is the kind of pieces where we are really happy as an oboe player. And when we get this kind of with lots of springing melody, it's not very comfortable, but it's as I said, it's quite funny to do.
The grave in F sharp minor, how did you find that?
Yeah, it's interesting because there is this Trionfo del Tempo overture with a very big oboe solo in F sharp minor, which I'm playing next month. And so for me, it's a good exercise to do this, trying to find ornaments in F sharp minor, because when you work on ornamentation, after a while you feel that some ornaments are just technically coming in the fingers. So if it's in G minor, I don't have to think anymore about what kind of ornaments I would do. My fingers just do it by themselves. And when I have to do it in F sharp minor, I have to start thinking again about fingerings, but also what kind of melodic movement I will use.
was the continuo part, because I thought it was quite natural for the lute in a way, but maybe the key was awkward, or...
I think for me, most of these movements are actually, it works quite well on the lute. For me, the sight reading, it tells me in what shape I am in, because now the festival, there's a lot of things to do. And when you are stressed and you have too much things to do, I mean, the first thing for me that falls apart is the sight reading and reading figures. But also, I must admit that you have to kind of keep your sight reading fresh. And the last year, I didn't do a lot of these things. And it's like a sportsman. I mean, if you don't do it like every week, you kind of, you lose a bit of it. So this was a good experience for me now, that it tells me I have to work a little bit more on sight reading.
And I think it was it was a lot of fun for me to play. And another question, because this edition that we are using today, it's quite an old edition. That's what I had at home, and I just grabbed it and brought here. Here we have this, all the chords are written, but we also have the figures. Sometimes I hear from continuo players that when you see written out figures, it distracts you quite a lot, because you see and maybe you would like to place your chord in a different position or different way, or arpeggiate, or I don't know. And when you see this fixed way of notation, the continuo realization, it actually kind of disturbs you while sight reading and while playing. Did you have the same feeling about that?
Yeah, it's true actually, because especially on the lute, I mean, normally when you find realized continuo parts, they are for harpsichord or keyboard instruments, and most of the times you wouldn't put your chords in this way. So it is actually, when the part is figured, then it's better when this line is gone, because it's confusing, as you say. I mean, sometimes it can help you, but most of the time it's confusing.
So for you, it was a double job to ignore the right hand part. And
A friend of mine, which is continuo player, he says, when I play that kind of thing, I have to play with Tipex in my eyes.
That's true. Yes, and Benoit, it's your first time in Norway or first time in Trondheim. How did you find it? Do you like it?
Yeah, I've been in Oslo a few times, but first time in Trondheim, and it's a nice city, interesting. It's possible to do some nice walk around the city. It's quite cold, of course. I'm always dreamed to have like project in South Africa in the winter, and then at the end it's Trondheim. But still, I enjoy the city very much, and the atmosphere of the orchestra and the festival.
Yes, and also we are playing in this wind group, and we don't have so much solos written out, let's say, and we have to play quite a lot with the violins, double them, or I'm doubling your voice. What do you think about the music? What would probably the historical way of performing it, and the purpose of this music, and the group that could have been played this music?
I think at the end, sometimes in the early music world, we are much too polite. This kind of music, it was performed in a foire, and I can imagine it was just like a big string quartet and a bunch of people playing some wind instrument at the back and doing something, like oboe for one movement and then flute for the others, and if you can play trumpet, just add the trumpet at the end. And we try to do something very civilized, which is nice. It's to be correct towards the audience, but still probably it was very, very flexible, the way they were treating the music for this kind of repertoire at that time.
And what do you think of the music? Is it like a movie music, like a background music? How would you describe this genre?
You know, I find the text very funny. And so I can imagine that the audience back then and the audience today, for them the most important is just to get the jokes, and the music is helping. And I find it amazing, because I didn't know Duny at all before playing this music. For me, beginning of opera comic was Grétry. You know, I'm Belgian, and Grétry, it's one of my idol. And actually he's doing kind of the same music as Grétry and kind of the same jokes and the same settings. So it's very interesting to see.
Do you know something about this intermezzi by Pergolesi? So it's also these comical operas that were performed in between of an opera seria, in between the acts, and people would go out for a drink, and then there will be musicians and actors performing these dialogues and playing. I think it might be something similar.
Yeah, you know, if I was in the audience, I think I would have a drink during the opera seria and come back for the opera comique.
Okay, priorities are important. Yes, and another question for you, Erik. Maybe you could tell about your experience as an artistic director. What is the most challenging part? Because you are doing so many things. You are multitasking every day and doing 100 things, booking tickets and preparing the parts that you have to play, concerts. What is the most challenging part of your work?
I think, everything kind of makes up a total amount of stress. So the way I kind of work during this festival week, when we begin, I kind of just put my mind and my body in this modus. So I go non-stop, like all day and sometimes all night long. And I just wait until we are finished, And of course, there's, as we say, a lot of running, from rehearsals, booking tickets, answering questions from musicians, and it's basically work around the clock. But we have a few good helpers at the festival, so I'm not alone.
I saw that in Norway you were hibernating during the winter, but you are doing the opposite. You work in the winter and then you sleep in the summer.
Maybe. Yes, and also another question related to that, because you're kind of curating this festival, right? We could say that. And you are also preparing the program and like the idea of the festival, the concept, the entire thing, and maybe the concept of each concert. How do you work on this concepting ideas?
We try. We have used to have kind of try to set a theme for every year, and we try to kind of build a program around that. But I also think that I like to present for the audience in Trondheim some of the major known works, like things by Handel and Bach, because I know that the audience
real stuff.
The real stuff. They like timpani and trumpets, And I think also it's nice thing to have in a festival, maybe as an opening concert or an ending concert. But in between this, we try to kind of find also, smaller groups, delicate things, and also interesting things that maybe is not so often played. Yeah, I think we have had quite a lot of things that you rarely see on the scene in Europe also.
Trondheim, it's an exciting place. Thank you very much for sight reading with me. It was amazing. I had a lot of fun and I enjoyed our sound, and I think we found a really nice mixture, and also in the orchestra I think our timbres blend very nicely together. It's amazing, and with lute it's always great. It's a great experience. Thank you very much. Yes, see you.